right, so now we're going to go into the mix of this one piece. This is called fragmentation, and it starts off with a fugue, goes into an improvisational section, and then ends. And so there's some things I did in the mix to kind of help those sections along. So we're going to start with the drums, and if you remember from the recording session, these were two different drum kits in the same room. So that kind of limits how we can edit things. We can't really get too granular with moving things around. We don't want to introduce phase problems. And with this style of music, we can kind of keep things natural. We can go into, this is the first drum kit here that was on the left side, and this is the other drum kit down here. They're both being bussed to drums 1 here, drums 2 there. I did very minimal processing on these. I like the way it sounded when it was being recorded. A little bit of auto align on each drum kit. So I took the left overhead and then have these ones detecting their relationship to that left overhead mic. So you can see here the different sample relationships that these were moved. Same thing over here. It's pretty basic. The only thing I did as far as dynamically controlling anything with plugins is this drum leveling thing, also from Sound Radix. And you can see, I'm going to play a bit for you here with just this soloed. You know, seamlessly compresses the kick drum. Each drum kit pan left and right, and I wanted the two kicks to be sort of felt with a similar amount of impact. And okay, so we see that. Same thing over here. And so going into this, there's zero editing done really. I nudged the starting point here. And before we go into that, I just want to mention that these grid lines are completely arbitrary. There was no click track or anything. So I'm going to blow up the waveforms a bit so you can see. This is the only real edit I did, was I lined up the two kick drums here and also the percussion down here to make sure that first hit was just right in there. So I'm going to play a little bit of the opening, just so you can kind of hear. This is modern jazz music, it's avant-garde jazz music, so it's a little bit different than a lot of these into the mix kind of videos. I don't really go in and do a lot of processing like I would for a pop song or a rock tune. So it's just kind of like, just record everything as well as you can and just try to stay out of the way. That's sort of my philosophy with this. So let's just play the opening. So it starts with a fugue. And if you can see, these are the sort of melodic instruments down here. We have a piano track. So yeah, these are the room mics for the drums. There were two sets of room mics. I had M49s and then the SF24, the ribbon stereo. I kind of just blended those a little bit. There's no reverb is being used on the drums at all. It's just the room sound that I'm using for that. And this is it's just an acoustic piano on this particular track. The other ones had keyboards and other effects, but this is just a piano with a couple 67s on it. Had a really great sound on this. So I didn't feel the need to do anything crazy. But if you want to see, oh, and by the way, most of the EQ and compression is all this UAD stuff. And really I just used this Harrison EQ and also this LA2A. I think this is the gray one. You know, everything's like really mellow, like not a lot of compression, just to kind of touch it a little bit and give it a tiny bit of color. And EQ settings, a little bit of high pass there, tiny bit of this low mid here, and some high and some, you know, like 1K-ish to kind of help it poke out in the mix a bit. I didn't feel the need to do that much to it. That's I kind of just like the way it sounds. So that's the basic theme of the fugue. You can hear some of the drum bleed in the background. So what happens is every instrument then comes in and plays this theme. And so I want to make sure that, you know, that it's all, each of these entrances are featured and, you know, kind of like poke out a little bit and then go back into the mix. So I'm going to play the whole thing for you, just really quick. Flute, bass, clarinet are starting with the piano was next. Then we have guitar coming in next. Daren playing bass here. And the other bass is the last one. you can hear the drum kits, they're both, basically playing similar things, but not at the same time. So it has this like kind of rhythmic flux that's being generated. And also like there's an Indian percussion instrument. It's just like this slurry of percussion and drums. And it's really cool. This is the sound we got. These are all ribbon mics lent to us by Royer. They gave us like 15 microphones to use for this session. It was really great. Condenser mics are great, but I like to, use a lot of ribbons if possible. The live recording session we did, the video from the session, sorry. I don't know if you remember, I used 2 microphones on the woodwinds when they were in the bass clarinet configuration. So you can see here, this is like the top microphone, and this is the bottom microphone on the same instrument. You can kind of see like how much information you're missing if you just would have put the one microphone down here. And when he's in this particular register, sorry, it's all of that. Because the sound, kind of depending on what register he's playing in, it emits from a different part of the instrument physically. And so having 2 microphones really helps capture the full range. Now, how full that is, and you're kind of missing that down here. Likewise over here. The real low end seems to like come from the bottom of the instrument. So basically with these, I just mix them completely identically, the same level on both faders. These are both being summed to this track here with a little bit of similar EQ to the piano, a little bit of high end, slight mid-range bump, and some high pass, and a little bit of compression. And this might have a little bit of 2K build up once in a while. So I put a de-esser on it, just like a band pass at 2K, just to kind of mellow out when it really like got a little bit intense in the upper mid range. So that's all as far as that goes. And then with some of these instruments, especially the flute, it was difficult to hear all the notes. And so what I wanted to do is I'll show you here is I did a lot of automation on this. And it's a little neurotic, but it's really effective, especially, like I didn't do it to everything. Just the opening of the guitar here, I wanted to make sure that was heard perfectly and that the theme was being treated with, the respect it needed for that. And then I kind of let it be. I mean, this is recorded through a guitar amp, so it wasn't, it was pretty dynamically controlled. Same thing with like the bass clarinet. I didn't really mess with that too much. Indian percussion too, I didn't really go in and do too much. But the bass, like especially like low end jazz bass, acoustic bass or electric bass, I like to kind of level things out because like, just a couple dB of difference in the notes and something can really disappear and drop out. It might be hard to hear it. So I want everything to be consistent. And you can do this. There's like, there's plugins that'll help you do this. There's Bass Writer, also the MV2 from Waves, and they're really great. But if you want to get it like sounding really natural, but controlled, and you just have the bass exactly where you want it in the mix, and you have the time to do it, this is really effective. It's not always a luxury you can afford. So after I do that sort of automation, these get summed to another track, which is kind of like where I would bump the whole level up because this is all hitting a compressor at a certain amount here. Let's open that up. And so you can see it's like very controlled. It's all, nothing's going to go above 3 dB of gain reduction. It's a good way for me to keep things controlled, but natural, it's kind of like, it's a way to like process things without it sounding artificial. And that bass is just always there, like right where you want it. And if you want a section to be louder, you just go ahead and grab these, and you can make your changes there and do whatever you need to do. So we went over the piano. It was like, just like super minimal, like nothing crazy. The first bass guitar here, I don't think I did anything. Yeah, just basically on this one, just hitting that compressor, kind of just getting that envelope on it. same, just very consistent. And then EQ, just a little bit of like taking some of that ultra low end out, which can sort of build up in a not pleasing way. Here's the other bass. Oh, so I pan these as well. Daren wanted these. He's the conductor, band leader. He wanted this sort of this two quartets playing simultaneously. And so I have guitars, the first bass, one drum kit, the flute on the left side, everything else on the right side. Okay, so this is the second bass, same thing. I did use the MV2 on this. I really like this plugin. I think Warren does too. I heard him mention it before. Kind of expanding and compressing at the same time. I don't know. I just like the bass to be really controlled. If it was, it's also genre dependent. If it was like a solo bass piece, you would allow the dynamics to breathe a little bit more. But for this one, I wanted to clamp down on it. Similar EQ to what I've been doing on everything else. Just kind of just boosting things, getting some low energy, a little bit of high energy, and a little bit of the low ultra stuff taken out. And then I also have, some distortion on him. So I decided to I like to use this for saturation and also to roll off some of the high end. I don't think Daren liked the really bright high end stuff on his bass. So I'm adding quite a bit of drive here. So if we take this out, this sounds a little bit more clear. But put it back in. Nice little buzz there. But if you hear it in the mix, it kind of just helps it be a little bit more present. You can do this sort of trick with any sort of distortion plugin. The UAD stuff tends to be a little bit softer, like not as crazy as some of the other plugins, so I like to use it for jazz. But depending on the genre, it's completely different. It's all, what you're trying to accomplish and what will suit your purposes. I was able to record everything myself, and I got everything sounding pretty much 85-90% of the way there, which is like microphone choice and placement. And this is all just helping it a little bit. Like nothing's crazy, just a little bit of EQ, a little bit of compression.
Do you have any plug-in processing on your master?
Just a 33609, just like a VCA compressor you'd see like on your SSL console. It's super low threshold. The gain is all the way down, 2-to-1 ratio, and like this, it's like, automatic, the first automatic recovery choice. Not doing much, although I think during the more dynamic parts here, it gets a little, you can see it kicking a bit. Just a little bit. So I wanted this to just kind of, the mix to breathe a lot. I mean, sometimes if I'm doing like a rock mix, I want everything to be super tight and just in its place and just like no dynamic movement, but this is like just a little bit different. So automation-wise, I do a lot of automation. That's one of my favorite things about Pro Tools is that you can kind of do this stuff quickly. Some of these like drum detail things are probably interesting. The way I like to like bring out certain details in these sections is I kind of like want something to stick out a little bit more, and so I'll go to my artist mix faders here that I have and turn off the automation for these tracks. They're all grouped. I just turned them off. And then I'll kind of like turn off the grouping and just throw a quick blend together. And then when I like where it is, I'm going to undo this, of course, is I'll just go ahead and write that automation, and then move on to the next thing. But let's make sure that we don't really do that. I couldn't hear these toms very well. These are the toms. Sorry. For the most part, I didn't do too much on the drums as far as automation goes. Most of my attention was on the flute, definitely. I wanted to be able to hear all of his playing and the low-end stuff. And actually the piano quite a bit too, yeah. As far as that, Yeah, unfortunately, it's not too much. I guess I did do some EQ on the kick drums. Let's see what I did here. Let's go back to an earlier part of the tune. Yeah, this is the kick drum just kind of like not processed by itself. And I thought it sounded great. You can hear it there. It's a little bit kind of open up there, brighten it up. And you can dump like 250, 300 a little bit, you know, and it kind of helps. If it's a rock, and if you're kind of doing like metal kick drums, you want to scoop it even more and make it really. And a little bit, sometimes I'll like high pass even more. I've done as much as like 100 on these sometimes, and it still sounds like there's plenty of low end, and it's just a way to like help it sound more present without all the uber low end muddying up things. And the two kick drums are different. I remember it's on the right side here, I took off the head of his drum and I was able to like get more surgical with the mic placement. And the first drummer requested I didn't do that. There wasn't a port or anything on the drum head. It was just like a closed in. I had to just mic the outside of it, but I think I put a packing blanket on it. And it was still fine, yeah. But they're very different sounds. This is more like a traditional rock kind of kick drum you get. It's nice and tight. Nothing dramatic, a slight high end. I don't know, something around here was bothering me. A little bit around 750, that looks like. And I'm high passing this one a lot more. And the panning scheme on this is interesting. So I let the room mics kind of keep their original panning. And okay, with this auto align thing, it on the room mics, it's not always necessary, and I kind of went back and forth between not using it and using it. And I for some reason on this tune, I opted to keep it on, and it's not always helpful. That's a whole discussion there, but we won't get into that. Yeah, so I'm like smashing it a little bit with the compression, brightening it up, taking out some of the low stuff. Actually added some low end there. Kind of like, I wanted to, just more of the room sound. Giving it that blown up compression sound a bit. And over here we have the ribbon mics doing kind of the same thing. And I think these were related to the overheads of the respective. So I think on this one, I aligned it to the left side kit, and on this one, I aligned it to the right side kit. Doesn't have to be that way. I just felt that sounded the best for this track. So yeah, and then so these two are just panned hard left and right, and then the drum kits themselves. So this one's going to this bus here, drum 2, and then this is being panned. So I just basically moved the left fader all the way to 12 o'clock. So it's all coming in on that side, and then the same thing with the other kit. And that seemed to be pretty good. I tried overlapping them a little bit, like keeping this fader a little more open, but it started to sound a little weird. And I don't know how many times any of us are going to have to deal with two drum kits being in the same room, so I don't know. I don't have a philosophy for this really, but this seems to work for this track. So basically all I did was level out some of these dynamic issues here, just so everything is really clear. You're hearing everything. We'll go over to this section where they're kind of, it's just improvisational. It's a solo section. Everyone's kind of soloing at the same time, and it sort of becomes like the flurry of activity. I brought out the piano here where I felt like it needed to be heard a little bit better. Because the other bass didn't really need the distortion as much, I kind of left that one without it. Did a little bit of automation. This is touch automation here I did for this particular section of the Indian drums. Yeah. So at the end here, there's nothing really, it kind of drifts back into the theme again near the end, and it kind of, they just fade themselves out after the solo section. Same theme from the beginning, explore it again. There's some kind of breakup on the guitar here that I don't know if it was intentional or not, but I think it sounds really cool. Yeah. And don't worry about this plus sign here on the output. It's just I'm summing it for the purposes of the video. That's not something I normally do. Everything is like being summed to a bus. That's pretty much what I like to do, and do a lot of sort of detail automation on these actual, like where the instruments are. Then use these bus faders if I need to control something programmatically. You know, like if I want to bring up something for an entire section, instead of using trim automation, I'll use this post compression just to make sure it's not affecting how it's hitting the compressor. Okay, yeah, so I guess to wrap it up, if you're not used to doing a lot of full tracking stuff, I guess like the first thing I do when I open a session is, yeah, just kind of listen to the drum sounds basically. And for some reason that sort of grounds me and prepares me for the rest of the mix. Kind of decide if anything's like kind of solo everything, make sure there's nothing dropping out. I'll blow up the waveforms. And sometimes you know, at the studio you have intermittent microphone signal flow issues, and you'll see that the hi-hat will drop out for a whole section, and it's, you know, unfortunate. But everything here was like fine. There were no issues as far as technical stuff goes at the studio. Listen to everything, you know. I mean, usually, yeah, I would high pass the hi-hat more, but I didn't really do that here. You're on the right cymbal. I didn't really feel like it was necessary. And one thing I didn't go over before, I did EQ the toms. I'm so sorry I didn't talk about that. And look at that, it was pretty drastic. So it's just. So there's that, I don't know, that papery kind of sound. So I like to carve away with I don't know, on drums, I like to use this UAD SSL channel strip. And this is the legacy one, I don't have the new one. I have so many plugins, it just becomes a matter of just picking one to just as your go-to, just to get on with it. So you're not like reinventing the wheel every time you mix. Yes, that's it, you know, high pass. Oh, I'm doing low pass as well here. Get rid of some of the cymbal bleed, probably why I was doing that. So this is the most drastic thing here, is like this upper mid-range dump at about 800. Yeah, and I'm actually, okay, so I'm boosting the low end here, and I'm cutting it over here to kind of like give it a little bit of like a resonant bump. So you kind of like, if you're dumping low end on something, you kind of want to bump it at that point that you're rolling it off to sort of give you a little bit of what you're missing. It's really hard to explain, but so you can kind of do that. You can kind of like boost the low end and then cut it. It's really hard to explain it scientifically, at least for me right now. So this is the low tom here. And the other ones on the other kit are the same. I'll just kind of... So once again, mostly I'm like trying to get rid of that papery sound. There you go. Boost some low end, roll off some low end, highs. Really drastic there. Okay. I guess I could have rolled off some of the high end there, but it doesn't seem to matter. So that's pretty much it as far as drum stuff goes. And then I kind of go in and I tackle the bass tone to make sure everything is okay with that, and nothing needed to be done surgically to the bass. It sounded good. The guitar sounded great. I had a DI as well, I think over here. Yeah, but I didn't use it for anything. You know, it's always good to get a DI if you can, because you can use it to reamp the guitar later if you don't really like the sound that you got, or you want to put some effects through it or something. But it wasn't really necessary. The guitar sounded really good. There's a 57 and a 121, both on the same cabinet. I'm using mostly 57 on this one. Yeah, so that's interesting. So this is Vinny. He was in the control room with me, so I had to, you know, if you remember from the video, I had to record in headphones the whole time because he was like right next to me behind a couple gobos. So that was the first time I did that. Just we had too many people, not enough isolation, and I wanted to make sure that everything was isolated, especially flute, because if you get any drums into the flute, it's really difficult to mix it, and you can't get away with doing all this automation on it. You know, if you have like drum bleed in the background. So that was a good idea to keep them in there with me. And so it's just sonically check everything for issues. If you got like noise problems, you might have to go in and grab some room tone here, you know, denoise it with isotope or whatever you have to do. I didn't do any of that stuff with this. So there's no like surgical pre-mixing that I had to do. After I just check everything and I deal with the EQ pretty much first, and then I'll go in and start deciding what needs the automation, you know, like the really detailed automation stuff. And sometimes I'll like be in the middle of a mix and I'll be like, wow, I'm really like having trouble hearing what's going on in the flute track. I'm going to have to go in and kind of level this out a bit. You know, you just really want to use your ear and not be too visual with this. If any note sticks out too much, and sometimes you want to respect his action, like he is trying to play something quieter, and you know you don't want to like destroy his intentions with it. And so I usually just like sit and like go through and do the automation next after the EQ, and then I kind of sit back and listen to everything more on a macro level and use the buses to do the final blending. Great, so that's basically my approach to this sort of a mix in this genre. I'm going to give you the tracks as well, unprocessed, so you can give it a try. And then once again, this piece is called Fragmentation.